All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going way back to March 1999.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is based on some materials that you sent me.
Okay.
One of them's actually a podcast episode about the Melissa virus. And if you've ever hesitated before clicking on an email attachment, maybe worried about what it could be,
Right.
then this deep dive is definitely for you because we're going to learn all about what happened back then.
Yeah.
So our goal today is, well, first to see how Melissa spread. Like, how did it get everywhere so fast?
Yeah.
And we'll also take a look at who made it, this virus, and how things changed after that.
Okay.
And we also want to see if we can draw any connections to, to the kinds of threats that are out there online today.
I think that's very relevant. Yeah.
So that podcast episode you shared, that really helps us to understand what was going on back then.
Uh-huh.
So you have to picture it. It's March 1999. The internet is, well, it's not brand new, but it's really becoming a thing.
Right. It's hitting the mainstream.
Exactly. Everybody's on AOL Instant Messenger,
Yeah. Yeah.
And email is how we communicate now, but back then it was becoming the main way.
I see.
But here's the thing, compared to today,
Yeah.
well, people just weren't as aware of online safety back then.
Right.
So into this, kind of less secure digital world, you have this programmer.
Okay.
His name is David L. Smith. He was in New Jersey. And he releases his creation, this virus.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, he named it Melissa,
Okay.
after an exotic dancer that he'd met in Florida.
Interesting. So for this first part of our deep dive, then,
Yeah.
the real question is, what did Melissa do once it was out there? Once it was released?
To really grasp the impact of Melissa, I think you have to remember how different the digital world was back then.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, nowadays, cybersecurity vulnerabilities are like a huge concern, right?
Yeah.
For businesses and individuals.
Oh, yeah. It's top of mind for everybody.
But in the late 1990s, it wasn't really a primary concern for most people.
Yeah. Back then, software development, they weren't really focused on those built-in security features.
Right, like we have now.
Yeah.
That's hard to even imagine it now,
Yeah,
right?
right,
We
yeah.
just get all these automatic security updates and warnings.
Yeah. Yeah.
But back then, it wasn't like that.
Okay, so let's talk about Melissa. Like, what was it, really?
Yeah, what was its main function?
So, Melissa, it was what we call a macro virus,
Okay.
which is basically a piece of bad code
Good.
that's hidden inside a Microsoft Word document.
So it wasn't something that you had to download separately?
Not exactly. No, it was more like, people were sharing Word docs through email all the time.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't think twice.
So to activate Melissa, you just had to open the document.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so you open this document. It looks totally normal.
Uh-huh.
What happens next?
Well, that's when things get interesting.
Okay.
So the macro code inside the document,
Yeah.
it starts running automatically.
Okay.
And what it does is, this is the key part. It automatically forwards the email to the first 50 contacts in your address book.
50.
Yeah, 50 contacts.
So if you're listening, imagine that
Yeah.
your computer suddenly sends this email to 50 people you know, people who trust you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how fast this thing could spread.
It was a chain reaction. Yeah, digital one.
So then each person who opened that attachment,
Yeah.
they'd unknowingly become part of the problem.
Exactly.
And it would just keep spreading from there.
Yeah, within hours, inboxes everywhere were just flooded with these infected emails.
I bet.
And it wasn't just personal email accounts either.
Right, I was going to say, it hit some big companies too, right?
Oh, yeah, huge companies. It caused all sorts of problems for them.
Oh.
Like all these infected computers sending out tons of emails.
Mhm.
It just overwhelmed everything. And big companies like Microsoft, even Intel, and parts of the U.S. government,
Oh, wow.
they had to shut down their entire email systems.
Really?
Yeah, just to get things under control.
That's incredible.
It's a real crisis.
It's hard to even fathom that happening today,
Right. And the speed,
Oh,
the
yeah.
speed at which it spread.
Unbelievable.
In just a few days, over 100,000 email accounts were infected.
100,000.
It was one of the fastest spreading viruses they'd ever seen.
Wow.
And it really showed how connected the internet was becoming,
Yeah.
And how quickly things could go wrong.
And this is where it gets really interesting for our listeners today.
Okay.
Because even though Melissa is, old news in the cyber world,
Yeah.
that whole idea of using email to spread harmful software,
Yeah.
that's still a major thing.
Yeah. That's a really key point.
It's like you can draw a straight line from Melissa to the attacks we see today.
Absolutely.
Like phishing attacks,
Uh-huh.
where they try to trick you into giving away information.
Right.
Or ransomware,
Oh, yeah,
and
ransomware.
where your files get locked up.
Yeah.
It all starts with an email, right?
Yeah.
An email with a bad link or attachment.
Exactly.
So it's basically the same method as Melissa.
More sophisticated.
Right. More sophisticated.
But the core idea is the same.
Exploiting trust through email.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's look at what happened once this whole thing hit.
Right.
Who stepped in to deal with it?
Well, given how widespread the disruption was,
Yeah.
with all these companies affected, it didn't take long for law enforcement to get involved.
I bet.
The FBI took the lead
Makes sense.
because it crossed state lines, even international borders,
And they were able to find the source pretty quickly, right?
relatively quickly.
How'd they pinpoint David L. Smith?
Well, they followed the digital breadcrumbs, you know.
What are those?
So for our listeners, these breadcrumbs,
Yeah.
they're little bits of information like hidden in the document or the email headers.
I see.
And by analyzing those,
Okay.
along with, following leads the traditional way, they were able to trace it back to Smith.
And he was arrested in April 1999.
Yeah, about a month after Melissa first appeared.
That's
Pretty fast, yeah, especially compared to today.
Yeah.
It shows that even back then, law enforcement was getting better at this whole cybercrime thing.
So what happened to Smith?
He pleaded guilty
Okay.
to charges related to creating and distributing the virus.
And what was the sentence?
20 months in prison
Okay.
and a $5,000 fine.
That doesn't seem like much.
Might seem modest now,
Yeah.
but back then, it was a big deal.
I guess so.
It showed that this stuff had real consequences.
But it doesn't end there, right?
No.
Smith actually worked with the FBI afterward
He did, yeah. That's a really important part of this story.
to catch other criminals.
Yeah, he helped them track down other people involved in cybercrime.
Wow.
A lot of people see that as a turning point.
How so?
Well, it showed that law enforcement was starting to understand
Yeah.
how these criminals thought, how they operated.
And Smith's insider knowledge was helpful.
Oh, incredibly helpful.
Oh,
It gave them a whole new perspective.
I bet.
And the legal side of all this. Yeah.
Well, it's changed a lot since 1999.
For sure.
If you look at it now,
Uh-huh.
the consequences for cybercrime are way more severe
Okay.
and much more complex.
Makes sense?
They had to create new laws
Yeah.
and update old ones
Uh-huh.
because these cyber attacks are just getting more sophisticated
Right.
and there's more potential for harm now.
So Melissa wasn't just a nuisance.
No, not at all.
It changed how we thought about online security
Definitely.
and even how we deal with cybercrime.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the big lessons we learned from Melissa.
All right.
What were the main takeaways?
I think the biggest one is that it was a wake-up call for businesses.
How so?
Well, before Melissa,
Yeah.
cybersecurity was kind of an IT problem,
Yeah.
like just something for the tech guys to worry about.
Right.
But then Melissa hit,
Uh-huh.
and it caused so much disruption
Yeah.
that everyone realized
Yeah.
this was a business risk,
Oh, I see.
a major one.
Yeah.
It could cost companies money.
Even shut them down completely.
It changed the way they thought about their whole digital setup, right?
Absolutely.
Like before it was, can our computers connect to the internet?
Right.
And after it was, how can we make sure it's safe?
Exactly.
How can we protect our business?
It was a real shift in thinking.
So what changed?
Well, for one thing, email security got a lot better.
Okay.
They developed better spam filters
Makes sense.
to block those emails with bad attachments. And they started educating employees more.
About the dangers.
Yeah, about not opening suspicious emails.
Right. That's so important.
It is.
Because people are often the weakest link,
Unfortunately.
Even with all the technology we have, cyber criminals still try to exploit human weaknesses.
Absolutely.
Like with social engineering.
Right.
Where they manipulate people into doing things.
Yeah.
Things that compromise their security.
That's right.
And those attacks have gotten even more sophisticated.
Oh, yeah. Very sophisticated.
Like ransomware.
Yeah.
It often starts with a really convincing email
Uh-huh.
that tricks someone into clicking something.
Exactly.
Or those BEC scams,
Oh, yeah.
business email compromise, where they try to trick employees into sending money.
Right. They exploit trust.
It's the same idea as Melissa, really.
Yeah, it's core. Yeah.
It all comes back to that advice we always hear.
Uh-huh.
Think before you click.
It sounds simple, but it's crucial.
For sure. Especially now.
So Melissa was kind of a starting point for all this, right?
In a way, yeah.
It paved the way for worse things.
If you look at the timeline,
Mm-hmm.
you see Melissa,
Yeah.
and then things like the I love you worm,
Okay.
my doom, wanna cry.
Wow.
Each one building on what came before, using more destructive methods.
So it's like an arms race.
Kinda, yeah.
The good guys versus the bad guys.
You could say that.
So for our listeners today, how does Melissa compare to what they might face?
Well, Melissa mostly caused problems by spreading really fast,
Okay.
but nowadays cyber threats are more targeted. I see.
They have very specific goals.
Like what?
Well, like with ransomware, the
Yeah.
goal is to get money.
Right.
And with state-sponsored attacks,
Okay.
they might be trying to steal information
Oh, wow.
or disrupt things like critical infrastructure.
That's scary.
Yeah, serious stuff.
So how are we defending ourselves now?
It's gotten much more advanced.
Yeah.
We have these layered security systems.
Like what?
Well, we have things like threat detection systems
Okay.
that look for suspicious activity
Mm-hmm.
and behavioral analysis.
Okay.
It tries to spot unusual behavior on your devices.
Wow.
And our endpoint protection is much stronger now.
Okay.
But even with all that,
Yeah.
staying vigilant is still key.
Right. Think before you click.
Exactly.
So Melissa might seem like ancient history,
Yeah.
but it really taught us some important lessons.
Lessons that are still relevant today.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
The biggest thing to remember is that everything is connected now. And even a small attack can cause big problems.
Like Melissa.
Exactly.
So what should our listeners do?
Stay cautious online,
Okay.
be aware of the threats out there,
Uh,
and practice good cyber hygiene.
what's that mean?
It means thinking before you click on anything,
Right.
keeping your software up to date,
Uh,
and just being aware of what's going on.
good advice.
Yeah.
And as we finish up this deep dive, I
Yeah.
have a final thought for you all.
Okay.
So we've gone from Melissa, which is pretty basic,
Yeah.
to things like ransomware
Yeah.
and state-sponsored attacks.
Right.
Really serious stuff. So how has all that changed how we view trust online? And what does it mean for the future of online interaction? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us.